sometimes I think it'd be way more fun if we just kind of hung out together and didn't have a talk. But here we go. So as you all noticed, life is filled with paradoxes. On one hand, you live on a planet that is rife with so many problems. The very survival of everybody who inhabits it seems to be on the line. And on the other hand, this place we were born into is absolutely awe-inspiring. So that's a paradox. We don't have to feel guilty about enjoying the awe-inspiringness of this place as we try to bring our best forward to solve the issues of survival that we're faced with. So over the years, as I've really come to appreciate the value of the activation of awe as part of the spiritual practice or development. When we feel awe, there's some joy that's marbled through there. There's a kind of loving friendliness and a connection to everything else. That's often there. And when that expansive connection that awe brings about is available, what happens, or when it's activated, what happens is that sometimes that self that we feel that is solid and fearful and embattled, that begins to erode away in the presence of awe. Now, we all kind of understand what awe is, but it's a little hard to define, kind of like pornography. We know what it is, but it's kind of hard to describe. And that's the way awe is, in a sense. Is there any words, just shout out any words that you might associate with awe? Anybody? Beauty. Wonder. Pardon me? Wow. Yeah. Grandeur. Amazement. What was that last one? Love. Humbling. Loss. Okay. There's a vastness in it. A bigness, often. And there can be an element of reverence. And at times there might even be a touch of fear associated with awe. We get awestruck by the power of nature sometimes, and it can bring up some fear. Or it can arise a little more subtly in us, the fear aspect. At this point in my life, I've chosen and been fortunate to be able to spend more of my time in the ocean. It's kind of what I'm doing as an old man. And it's allowing a lifelong passion to kind of have its way with me. There are times when I'm diving in the ocean, scuba diving in the ocean, especially by myself, and it might be at night. I'm just kind of drifting along and kind of feeling the immersion in this liquid that's supporting me and holding me. It's kind of, I can't remember what it's like to be in a womb, but it has that, I think it has that quality. And on the inside, turning attention to the inside, that kind of pulse and movement of the liquid inside, inside what's a really porous thing, the skin. It's a biodegradable bag that kind of holds all the stuff, junk in there for a while, you know. You know, we are mostly fluid. We are fluids, mostly. And I remember getting the cremains, which are after you're cremated, back from the crematorium from my parents. It's like a 150-pound body is like 4 or 5 pounds. Many of you have had this experience with loved ones. It's like, whoa. So we are mostly liquid and some dust, so to speak. And if you think about it, your blood is really like your private ocean. That's a little crazy, maybe, and it's a very close approximation to what life might have been like for our early ancestors, this flow of blood. Really early ancestors. Those microscopic single-celled organisms that we evolved from, if you believe in evolution. Basically, they floated around, a little one cell in the ocean, and they extracted some nutrients, brought them in, and then they excreted some waste products. And that's what our ancestors did all day long. In and out, in and out. Very simple. And not only is blood mostly mostly water, you know, but the plasma part of blood, the really watery portion of the blood, chemically almost mimics the chemical composition of the ocean. So we know where we came from. So in just kind of swimming along and feeling the inside and outside, it can become very, very relaxing. And those boundaries of what's in and what's out can get fuzzy. And it's just like informal meditation. We played a little bit with it at the end of this meditation. And there can be, while diving and while meditating, a kind of the concept that we have of time, that there's a past and there's a future and there's a now, that can kind of disappear or relax out. And if you think about it, how in the world would you describe now? Does now last 2 seconds? 1 second? Half a second? Quarter of a second? 16th? Millionth? Nanosecond? Is now eternal? You know, when you keep shaving it back like that, well, then it's just, well, there is no past. There is no future. There's an eternal now. And we can have that direct experience in meditation. I also kind of get it in the ocean floating around. And then the other concept, there's time. What about space? You know, that concept of space being there's a here and a there, well, where is the here? Is it like, generally we feel, oh, the body, my body, that's the here. Well, is it? Or is it a little bit around the body? Or is it inside the body? Is it like a 6-inch cylinder? Or is it a dot that floats around? Is that the here? But maybe there's no there. Maybe it's all here. Okay? Maybe it's all now, and it's all here. And there's no there. See, you don't want to think about this too much because it's a little mind-blowing and it kind of can bring up another dimension. So, can be in that space. And what I've discovered myself, that oftentimes, whether I'm floating around or meditating, that all of a sudden some fear comes. Boom. It's like, oh, don't know where it comes from. A little something. And it's like there's like a contraction and a reconstitution of the self. It's like, where did all that go? Boom. Back. This little thing, whatever. It's like, yikes, I disappeared. Some people would say, well, the ego jumps in to reclaim itself because it gets frightened because you're now beginning to dissolve into everything. So awe. I mean, it's a strong sense of transcending the everyday human experience into something more extraordinary. Now, meditation can make the ordinary extraordinary. Whether it's just taking some bites out of an apple and staying with that taste and the crunch and the flavor, etc., that moves through. Very ordinary. Most of the time we just gulp our food down. We don't even taste it. So meditation has that quality to bring awe into the most, quote unquote, mundane daily activities. So when we practice meditation, and there is that balance, as I spoke before, of alertness and calm that comes up to make that state, and it's also called samadhi. There are named and recognized like 32 mental factors that come together when there is that feeling of calm, flow, presence, alert relaxation. And they're beautiful mental factors. And they have to do with kind of feelings of equanimity and balance and of even charity, the inability to do anything harmful in that state. There's a kind of flexibility and capacity in that state of samadhi. And there's a sharpness of mind. And so when those states are present, when we're not freaked out or anxious or whatever, and this happens naturally also, that's a real seedbed for the experience of awe to come out of. Awe, we know awe gets kind of stimulated externally. And we maybe, hopefully, you'll all have your favorite places that create awe for you. Different environments or objects or events that you would consider awe-inspiring. Art, all the different media of art offer examples of that, and we're all drawn to different aspects of art. A piece of music, taking in a great painting, a sculpture, whatever it might be. I can remember a few years back, I was at the Boston Fine Arts Museum, and they had a traveling exhibit of Rembrandt's etchings. And so they actually had the copper plates that he would use to make his prints. And I literally fell to my knees looking, and of course I fell to my knees not because I was going to pass out from the experience, but I did. I fell to my knees because I was so amazed that this little, like 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch piece of copper plate, he did this amazing detailed self-portrait on it. And I fell down so I could get the light angling off the piece of copper. I mean, I was awestruck. How could a human being do this? It just seemed impossible. I was like, my mind was blown. And art can do that for you. Now, I'm not sure there's a God up there, but maybe there is or whatever. But I am sure that something touched Rembrandt. A God, the source, infinity, or whatever, to be able to do that. And that's, through the art world, that we have that experience. And on another part of the scale, we can be awestruck by the power of what humans can do. Gulf War, shock and awe. That was not a misnomer. A lot of fear involved in that for those suffering the results. And awe can also open in those moments of experiencing mortality. When a loved one or a friend is making that passage, or they have just made that passage, you can remember those moments. There, of course, is the roller coaster of grief. But there are those moments of great awe of the mystery of this. What is this life? And where did that life go if we've lost somebody? Where are they? Somewhere? Everywhere? What's the deal? When we rest in mystery like that, or when we reflect on it, that can bring up awe. All religions, including Buddhism, have all the answers to those questions. You can get those answers. You can look them up. But come on, it's a miracle that all these systems that it takes to be alive, all these different systems we learn about in elementary school, the circulatory system, the cardio, all these things, they all kind of come together and they work pretty well for a while until they don't in the end. But that's just amazing. So having that sacred privilege of being with someone who is dying opens that possibility of directly experiencing the mystery of this creation. And if you were to think back to losing people, how the reverberations of that mystery, at least for a time, you didn't sweat the small stuff. That stuff just kind of dropped away. You were in the bigness of it, the poignant reality. Now, awe is becoming a new research topic, along with the other emotions. Well, Einstein had this to say. He often did not mince his words. He said, "He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed." Way to go, Albert. And Su Yun, who's a famous Zen teacher from the 18th and 19th century, he said this to his students: "If you have no spirit of reverence, no feeling of awe for all that lies beyond the confines of that miserably circumscribed illusion you suppose to be your me, you will make no spiritual progress. Why? Because when your practice improves, you will reflect, I did better in my meditation just now, and by so thinking, fall back to the lowest level of ignorance owing to the consequent inflation of your devilish I." Su Yun, he's pointing to what all spiritual teachers try to support in their students, and try to help students to kind of poke holes in that sense you have of that solid, separate, embattled, suffering self against the world. Because that is an illusion. We are connected to everything. We are everything. We are stardust. So all spiritual practices worth their salt, they're poking holes at that. It's not true. And so, so it goes. And there's research that's being done. There's a bunch of it being done at Arizona State. I discovered it's kind of interesting. This woman, Michelle Shiota, she runs what's called the Splat Lab, where they investigate emotions. And that stands for, her name is Shiota. Shiota Psychophysiology Laboratory for Effective Testing, SPLAT. And so she uses this integrative approach, and they're looking at all these emotions. But what she's discovered that the power of awe often dwarfs all these other positive emotions. And they're studying positive emotions there. That it has all kinds of amazing benefits when we're in that moment. So I don't know, they list them and list them and list them. I'll try to hit on some of them here. Well, certainly it relaxes, it increases curiosity, it enhances our ability and desire to take in novel information from the environment. It's associated with a greater desire to get up and explore. It promotes cognitive changes that reduce reliance on existing knowledge and assumptions, which we often use as shortcuts when perceiving the world around us. So we don't really have beginner's mind. We don't really look into the face of a loved one. We don't really feel that person who we're with. We just kind of boxed it all up. But if we've cultivated some awe in us, then when we see that person, maybe it's like, oh my God, I may never see that person again. Because that does happen eventually. And so it's a freshening. Awe freshens, And it brings people together. She says, in appreciating the vastness of an experience, we realize that we are part of a bigger picture. In doing so, me becomes we. Awe inspires collaboration and cohesiveness. And promotes mindfulness. Unlike fear or excitement, where there's a kind of adrenaline rush and fight or flight activity, awe is associated with stillness and attentiveness. And they've got the study now says it improves physical health. The interleukin 6 is an inflammatory marker associated with stress and depression. And at the University of Toronto, people who report more experiences of awe have lower levels of this. So, anyway, I'll stop there. But in terms of the research, there's a new book out, Matthew Fox, who's a Christian kind of mystic. I think he was booted out of his order for being too radical, but he's an amazing teacher. And so the book is called The Lotus and the Rose, and it's he and Lama Somo, a Tibetan Lama, this woman, they have this interaction. And there's a little section about awe, where they're kind of going back and forth about the benefits of awe. And so Matthew Fox says this, I think all creativity comes out of an encounter with silence. And when you think about what is an experience of awe, for example, it shuts you up. Whenever you're in awe, you're just not, whether it's the sunset or whatever, you're not broadcasting. He goes on, he says, there's a great story of Job. Job had all these troubles, He's arguing with everybody. And then finally God reveals himself to Job. And God says, were you there when I formed the world? Were you there when the lion was born? And so forth. God goes on and on. And then it says that Job put his hand over his mouth and he shut up. He learned some silence. But with a hand over your mouth is a sense of awe. I think all awe renders us silent, and therefore all experiences of awe are this quick trip back to no sound, no word, to nothingness. And that's why they're so valuable, he says. And we have to build our lives, our culture, our education, our spiritual lives on those profound experiences that take us beyond. For one thing, if you look at it physiologically, it's beyond our left brain. It's our left brain that wants to talk. The right brain is happy to be silent or to make music or to try another language. That takes you closer to carrying on the journey of awe. I like to see art as humanity's capacity to increase awe in the universe. So, everything we do that's beautiful brings more awe, and therefore more silence. And Lama Tsomo says, and purifies vision. And Matthew Fox says, purifies vision, and purifies the visionary, that is. The artist gets purified in the work. And Lama Tsomo gets in a piece on the Buddha here. There's a corollary to the Buddha. The students asked him to describe pure truth, what he saw, and he fell silent. So it's a famous moment in Buddhism as well. Nevertheless, maybe we can sneak a peek at it by saying what it's not. Because one thing it's not is a vacuum, an unknowing vacuum. There's cognizance about it. There's awareness about it. It does have this knowing, not of a thing or a this or a that, but there is a knowing. And as many of you know, one of Buddhism's endearing qualities is that there's always these trainings for all these different things. And there's trainings and meditations for different forms of love, for forgiveness, tranquility, equanimity. And you can use the same principles of these trainings that we've done here and know about for cultivating greater awe. Of course, we can go out externally and place ourselves in those positions that we know work for us. And we happen to live in a paradise here in this region. It's very easy, to get out, but we got to get out. Or though, so that's externally. Internally, how do we enhance it? How do we enhance this very valuable emotion? Well, first it's the old mindfulness. Recognize when we're in awe, when maybe we have shut up, maybe we are dumbfounded by something. Oh, this is the activation of awe. And just feel it a little bit. Both in the body and the mind. What is that like when we're in awe? What do you notice? What's going on? Are the spaces growing between your cells? Crazy concept. What about inside your cells? What are you feeling there? Where are your boundaries when you're in awe? Are they tight, loose, gone? All the nuances. And then after the experience of awe, whatever it is, reflecting back on it. What were the causes and conditions that kind of allowed that to happen? What seemed to bring it on? What characteristics of heart and mind allowed that to be active? So really, it's just some simple mindfulness and reflection. And all this as we pause there and kind of embrace it, fall into it, relish it. It all inclines the nervous system for that to occur more deeply and with greater frequency. So it's all pretty freaking awesome. And that's all I have to say tonight. So, thank you all, and we'll be back next week, same time, same station.